Welcome to the Mike Bowie Show, where we talk with people who influence people. All right, so welcome to the Mike Bowie Show, where we talk with people who influence people. And today I've got a great guest. Love this guy. His name is Mike Elam. He's he works with i3 Broadband. He's involved as a great community partner, and he's also a county councilman. Been a county councilman for many years. So welcome, Mike.
Hey, hi.
How's
I'm
it going?
excited to follow John Dawson. You know,
John's a cool guy.
John is a cool guy. It's my goal in life to one day be John Dawson.
Well, you know what? If he was any better, he would probably be you.
You know, I love that, and I agree with you. It meant a lot to me until I found out he says it to everyone,
To everybody.
Now I just feel played. You know.
Well, I told him on that
I feel
interview.
so cheap.
I know.
Heard that. That's where I was like, really?
I don't know if I'm okay with this.
But you have had a great lineup so far of folks that you've had. And,
Thank you.
A couple of the ones that you've had recently with John Dawson and Mark Hollander are just, you know, amazing people. And
They are.
They do so much for the community. And people like that are why I love living here. I mean, we just have so many of those folks.
St. Charles County, where we are, and I've been very fortunate to have listens from all over the world. So if you're the guy in Belgium that keeps downloading this, St. Charles County is really incredible. You should visit.
Yeah, we have a house here and for you, and we have beer. So if you're from Belgium, you should like St. Charles County.
You should like it a lot.
You should like it a whole lot. We actually have a lot of beers here. So
There are a lot of great, wonderful microbreweries.
yes, and of course we have America's first wine appellation in Augusta. So
That's right.
If you're a beer or a wine person,
We got it all.
we have it all. But we really have the best people in the world. So more than anything, you should want to come here and discover the people that are in our community.
This is a wonderful group of people, and we have from A to Z.
We do.
We've got them all.
Yeah.
And they're all welcome.
Yeah.
We love the variety of opinions and ideas. You know, we've got all the history represented in St. Charles County.
We do. I mean, it's funny in talking about who is what is history in St. Charles County, and everybody kind of harkens back to Lewis and Clark, and so 1803, 1804, like that's kind of our history.
Right.
So it's funny for work. We have a system in Rhode Island. So recently, I've been traveling back to Rhode Island. What a completely different sense of history. They're like, oh, you St. Charles people are so cute with your 1800 stuff.
Yeah, and
like,
maybe some late 17s if we're, you know.
right. And it's like, I got a chance to meet the mayor of Quincy, Massachusetts, right? So he's got a coin that he gives you. It's a mayoral coin, and it says Quincy 1625.
Yeah, that's deep.
And you're like, wow, okay.
That's
so,
different.
You know, we are teenagers compared to those people.
Right. We're just coming up.
Right. But what's funny is the county just continues to grow, and we continue to get people. I mean, we're kind of known as the fastest growing county in Missouri, and we've had that for over 20 years. Mm-hmm. Which you would think eventually that would slow down. And I think it's probably going to over the next 10 years. I think that's going to happen. If for no other reason, we're running out of land.
Yeah.
So that is going to slow it down.
Well, you know what? Let me jump in there because I was flying over Bush Wildlife.
Okay. Which is in my council district.
It is.
Yes.
New Melly, all the way out through Defiance and Augusta. And there are thousands upon thousands of acres
Right.
of uninhabited wooded land.
Yes.
And it's beautiful.
It is. And it's one of those kind of things where, with my county council hat on, when you start looking at an area like that, some people will say that's a great area to be developed in the future.
Right.
Some others would say that's an area that needs to be preserved because of the character of the region, right? So just because you have a piece of ground doesn't mean you need to develop it.
Right.
So one of the things that planning and zoning will screw up your community really quickly, right? If you have bad planning and zoning, it can really screw up your community. So getting down into that area, and it's the second county council district, County Council District 2. What we're trying to figure out is, where is our buffer zone for there? So you grow, out from O'Fallon, down from Wentzville, and the traditional subdivisions that you have of, 10,000 square foot lots, 15,000 square foot lots. And then you get into 1 acre lots and 3 acre lots and 5 acre plus, right? And I'm sure everybody's going, this is super boring, Mike. Thanks for bringing this up. But it's one of those things where what we're trying to do is establish like a 3 acre buffer zone in between where the cities are creeping in and where the country begins.
Do you mean 3 acre lots?
3 acre lots. So
okay.
I want to set up a 3 acre lot area that kind of stops the expansion, if you will, of those subdivisions coming down. And then as you cross over from a 3 acre, you're at 5 acre minimums going from there. And what that really does is it protects the wine country region more than anything else. I mean, you go to Napa Valley, you don't go to see the condos, right? That's not what's there.
You're not going there to see the standard shops.
You're not.
The Kohl's and the Targets.
And you shouldn't have those in an area like that. So some areas just bring different culture, different character, and you need to preserve that.
My wife and I were talking the other night about we have
it's
family.
Good that you're talking to your wife.
We still talk.
That's
it's been
good.
23 years. We're still at it. This was one of the few. No, I'm kidding. We have family. Her side of the family in Oregon.
Okay.
And that's beautiful, beautiful country.
It is.
And then we have family in Alaska. We have some family in Florida, and we were talking about how
you run off everybody to all the parts of the. Oh no, that's not.
Well, here's where we were going: is that when she travels more than I do.
Okay.
When she goes to see them, sadly, she's seeing more and more of the same things.
Which is
the same shops, the same strip centers, the same thises and that's, and much of that charm and character. And I think that it's because of the amount of information we have. There's nowhere left to explore, really.
Right.
We know what everything looks like.
Right.
If I want to see the Eiffel Tower, I pull up a picture of it. You don't daydream and say, one day I'm going to see what that looks like.
Right.
Now, that's good and bad, but some of the charm of the difference, like if the difference is why we travel, we've lost some of the charm of the difference.
Well, and I think that's why you have to be mindful of that, and why you have to pay attention of what makes your community different. How did your community stand out? Like you were talking about the guy from Belgium. A, thanks for listening.
Right.
B, if you do come here, you need to understand, what am I coming here to see? Right. And if you have something like a historic Main Street that goes back to the early 1800s, you protect that character because it's different and it makes you special. If you have America's first wine appellation in Augusta, you protect that because it makes your community special.
Right.
It gives you an added character.
Right.
I can find a McDonald's and a Kohl's and all those things that you were talking about.
Right.
But I think that also speaks to why, if you have unique small businesses, you have to pay attention to them, and you need to go there. Last night, I went to the O'Fallon City Council meeting because I hate my life, I guess. I have no idea why else I would do that, right? I do government meetings twice a month, but yet I went to another one. But
for fun.
For fun, right? It's just good to see the council members, right? They're great people.
They really are.
They really are. But on our way, I went with another guy, and we went to Cafe Rendezvous for dinner, right? Because he's not from here. And he said, where do you want to go? And in my mind, I'm running up and down Highway K and Main Street O'Fallon thinking, where do we want to eat?
You've got all the suspects. You've got them all.
All of the chains are there.
Which is wonderful because everything that you might want, you can get within 5 miles.
Right.
On Highway K.
But to me, it's, what about that small business owner?
Right.
Right? And what can I do to show support for them?
Well, and also what's unique to O'Fallon. Rendezvous Cafe is wonderful.
It is.
it's a wonderful little slice of what O'Fallon has to offer.
It does, and they do a fantastic job. And my niece works there,
Oh,
so
well.
it was a 2-for-1, right?
Yeah.
I get to support a local small business that does a really great job of serving their niche of customer. I got to see my niece, which is always special, and I got to introduce a friend of mine who doesn't live here to a place that is just different.
Right.
And he lives over in Chesterfield, and Chesterfield is just, booming with everything.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say Chesterfield is booming with unique small businesses.
No, it's not a place that you're going to go to find quaint character.
Right.
But you're going to go there to find a lot of everything. And some wonderful, wonderful people live there. And you get right in the valley and all through that region. But everything that you need and
Right.
could want is available.
It is.
But Chesterfield is not a place with quaint character.
It
and I
is
mean
not.
that with utmost respect.
Yeah, it's a great community, and,
Right.
and everybody points to it as, wow, Chesterfield is a cut above.
It is. It's
most.
progressive. It's
Right.
they're forward thinking, and they're bringing great things to the community.
They are. But, a place like Ethel's, a place like Cafe Rendezvous, like those are cool places to go sit. And this guy likes wine. So I am not a wine guy. So I have a beer. He has a glass of wine. And he's watching all of these people come in because in the back, they're doing a wine tasting event. And they probably had 30 people back there for this wine tasting
That's
event.
a great room back there, and they allow
It
the
is.
community to use it
Yes.
consistently.
And in the front, they have a jazz band playing, right? So it's like two different things that are going on that this guy says, I've got to bring my wife here.
Right.
And that's kind of what we were talking about of what are you going to experience if you come
Right.
here? Well, I've got a lot of places like that
Right.
who are small business people who, similar to you put your money, your time, your talent on the line. Small business people are the people who take the risk and get out there. And in many cases, they risk everything.
And I feel like I'm in the company of greats, being in these chambers of commerce.
Yeah.
Being in especially now having a desire to get involved in politics to some degree. I really feel empowered about our community and where we're going. Now, there are problems too.
Of course, there are
There's
problems
struggles.
in every community. But when Amazon was talking about a couple of years ago, they wanted to find a new corporate headquarters number 2, right?
Right.
I was not in favor of the St. Louis region being one of those places. And people said, how could you say
why?
that?
How
These
come?
they want to bring thousands of jobs that are high paying to your community. I said, yeah, but I've seen what happened at the Ford plant in North County. I've seen what happened with the Chrysler plant in South County. When those go away,
It leaves
devastates
a gaping
your
hole
community.
in the community.
And many people would tell you North County has never survived Ford leaving.
Right.
And it just put them in a spiral that they couldn't dig out of.
Right.
I don't want my community beholding to any one organization
Right.
that
To
much.
have that much at stake in one. Eggs
There's
in one
always going to
basket.
be a better mousetrap, right?
Well,
So
how many jobs
Amazon's-
are in Amazon there?
Well, it would have been for that particular
The main
branch.
facility in the flats up there.
You would have Are you talking about the headquarters that they were talking about?
Well, I guess when I drive up 370 and I see the Amazon, that huge stretch
Now
there.
that's different. That's a warehousing district.
Okay.
Right? I'm all on board for warehousing.
Okay.
Right?
But
So-
you're talking about headquarters.
I'm talking about they were doing a second headquarters and it was going
Right.
to be like 20,000 people.
Really?
Right. Which brings up a whole other thing of where do you put them?
Where do you house them?
Which gets back to
How do
our
you feed them?
earlier
Where do you
growth
house them?
part,
Yeah.
right? But warehousing I'll take all day long because when a better mousetrap comes along and there is the new Amazon, whatever that's going to be, right? And that second headquarters goes away, that's a big scar on your community that's going to be tough to fix.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a bunch of warehousing areas, that's something anybody's going to use.
Right.
And it
Every
translates
business
to
needs a
somebody.
place to put stuff. And
Right.
right now we have a shortage of I have business owner friends
Everybody needs
who
it.
are asking me for commercial, industrial, refrigerated storage. Where do we find it?
Right.
And as I
soon
ask
as
around,
you
it's just
build
not available. Yeah, it'll be filled up.
It's filled.
I think we should probably team up on that.
There we go.
Are you into commercial property?
I could be, I guess.
Let's go there.
All we need is property.
Well, I want to ask you. We just need land.
We just need land.
So I want to ask you. This is a question that I ask every one of my guests.
Okie dokie.
So we really dove in on St. Charles and the community, but I want to. Since this is a podcast about people who influence people, I believe you're an influential person, and so do others. So do others in my circles. And many people were excited that we're talking today, and I am too. Thank you so much for being here. But here's my question.
Okay.
What's it like being Mike Elam?
It's awesome being Mike Elam. I mean, why wouldn't it be? I mean, let's
I agree.
let's be real, right?
If I'm real, I think, do you agree that people attract people
I do.
that are like them, or that have a spirit of joy, or whatever you're into? If you're into mud wrestling, you're going to attract mud wrestlers, right?
Which is a unique community.
It's
and always fun people. They
really are.
They're not the cleanest.
Tall, short, whatever. It's all
they're
there.
Lots of fun.
So I'd like to think that I attract good people in my circles, and you and I have connected personally and in the professional realm over the last few years. But what's it like being you? What's your day like? I mean, you work a job full time.
I work multiple jobs.
You do.
I do.
You've got your voice of St. Charles.
My full-time job is the Vice President of Community Affairs and Market Development for I3 Broadband.
And let me ask you, does that take 40 hours a week for you to do?
It actually takes more.
Does it take more?
Okay. So we're in Rhode Island, we're in Central Illinois, we're in Missouri, and I am the guy for all three states. So, have car, will travel.
Right.
So like talking be in Quincy, Massachusetts, and we're looking at that market and expanding our footprint in Aquidneck Island in Rhode Island, and then expanding all over. We're the largest fiber to the home provider in Central Illinois. So I've got all those communities to talk with. And then we started expanding in St. Charles County last month, and now we're building in St. Louis County and Metro East. So there's a lot of people for me to go talk with, which I love. But yeah.
But you've also got interests in obviously politics.
Right. So on the county council, which...
Is that your only role you've served in politics?
It is. Got appointed to it in...
You filled a vacant seat, right?
I did. Nancy Matheny moved, and when she moved, her seat became available. So I stepped into that role.
And that was 2013.
April of 2013. So
okay.
I just
so
celebrated
you were appointed
9 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks very much. It was a great anniversary.
I don't have a cake or anything. I'm sorry.
And you know what? Neither did anyone else, which gives you an idea.
My friend owns Mr. Good Sense right down the road.
I love Mr. Good Sense.
I can get you one of the best Italians. One of the best hot Italians in the county, right there. That guy does it right.
See, I'm in.
But now that's a chain. But isn't that interesting that that's a chain restaurant?
Right.
And I'm not a food connoisseur, but I love good food. And if I want a hot Italian sandwich, that's where I go.
And it's
a
have
chain.
Never had a hot Italian sandwich at Good Sense. I've always had the cold sandwiches, but I love their bread. I think
their bread's wonderful.
I think it's great.
When I come into work, I can smell the bread,
which would be bad for me, right? So I'm not exactly the smallest of people, and I do enjoy eating. So that would drive me crazy.
You're a big, strong man, Mike.
I don't know about strong, but big. Yes, we are there. But back to your earlier question. So I have the I3 broadband. I have the county council. The county council is we meet twice a month,
right?
And a lot of people say, well, you only work 4 hours, 6 hours a month.
You have a lot of reading and study.
Not only that, you have a lot of phone calls and emails, right? So
how many people are in your
58,000 are in a county council district.
And they all have your cell phone.
It feels like it sometimes. My wife would tell you yes, that and they have no qualms about reaching out at whatever time.
Are people respectful or largely?
Generally. And that's something we can talk about if you want to, because
I'll go anywhere you want to go. This is your hour.
Well, so that's one of the things that I think is most disheartening about where we are today, and that is, are people respectful? I would tell you before, Yeah. And the majority of people now, yes, I agree that's true. Lately, though, we have seen this rash of ugliness and disrespectful attitude. Look, if you don't respect Mike Elam, you don't respect me as a person, that's fine. Respect the office if you come to a county council meeting. Don't yell out in the middle of the meeting, call people names. That's not how to get people to do things for you.
You're not going to win friends and influence people that way.
You are not, Mr. Carnegie. That is not going to work, right? So, but just it costs you nothing to be nice to people,
right?
And you can disagree with people without being disagreeable. That is a skill that we seem to have lost in our country right now.
It is. It seems like and growing up with microphones in front of my face.
I'm with you.
As a musician, as a public speaker, I can tell you that some people should have microphones. And some people should not.
I probably shouldn't have a microphone just because I don't know when to put it down.
Well, you use it well.
Thank you.
But and I hesitate to go this deep, but there's almost a vitriol in people that, now that everybody has a microphone with Facebook and Twitter, and we all have a microphone.
Right.
And there was a time when some of those awful thoughts didn't have an avenue for expression.
Yeah, you at least had a filter.
Or maybe you had
a pause button.
Maybe you would share it with a neighbor or your town, and they would tell you, no, that's wrong. But now you can broadcast this stuff to the world.
Yeah, and I mean,
and I'm not saying
social
that
media is a big part of that. I am not a big Twitter guy, but Twitter seems to be a whole community of just really angry people.
Just really, yeah.
I'm like, why are you so mad? Like, what has happened in your life?
Well, did you ever have a period in your life where you felt that it was darker than lighter? Like, have you gone through a period like that where you've been in a funk, a rabbit hole or something, and it's like, man, things just aren't working out, and I don't know why.
Right. I mean,
I think we all do.
I think we've all been there at some point. I mean, maybe it was a death, maybe it was a disappointment,
a job thing, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of reasons. I mean, shoot, so I was in radio for 27 years.
Right.
Right. So back in the early 90s, I was working at KSD when it was 93.7. It was classic rock.
I loved that station.
J.C. Corcoran, Joe Mama Mason, Chuck Jeffries, Mark Close. Great lineup, right? So I
still see Mark Close
guy.
from time to time. All right,
Mark's still around because it's St. Louis and people don't leave St. Louis radio.
The U-Man.
John Hewlett's been around but he was a Casey guy.
He was a Casey guy,
a KSD guy.
But these are radio icons in St. Louis.
So, but in 1994, I was the overnight guy at the station. They decided to make a change with my job, which means the job was still there. I just wasn't doing it anymore. What was bad about that, and what gets to your dark time in life?
Right.
We were a month away from closing on our very first house. Right. My wife was 6 months pregnant with our very first child.
Yeah.
So we were not making a lot of money. I mean, an overnight radio DJ.
You don't get hazard pay for that.
You really don't. There's I think they kind of look at it of, you're lucky that we even pay you to do this job, right? These days, you don't even have overnight DJs anymore.
Right.
A computer does the job. So that shows you of how hard it would be to replace me. We just put a keyboard in. So
the value quotient.
Exactly.
It's like drummers.
You're really not bringing ouch, that hurts. So I lost my job. It almost lost the house. Had to start paying Cobra insurance,
and that's
so we didn't lose that to having the baby, right? And but I started selling pots and pans door to door.
Did you really?
I did. Oh my God, that was
horrible.
Do
what you have to do.
You do.
That's what a man does.
I was an assistant manager at Foot Locker. You did whatever you needed to do, and I picked up a part-time job working at Smooth Jazz. God bless Ted Habeck for hiring me back then. But it's one of those times where when you go through something like that, you can understand why some people just cash it in.
Yeah.
I mean, they just feel so lost. They don't know where they're going. And if you don't have some sort of support system around you, it doesn't have to be a financial support system. It just has to be an emotional support system more than anything else. I was lucky because I have two parents who are always Mike Elam fans. Right. So that was awesome.
Are they here?
No, they're in. Well, my mom passed last year, but my dad is down in Northwest Arkansas.
Gotcha.
But I had a wife that, for whatever reason, said, I'm good with you doing this radio thing. I'll hang with you. And I'm like, you do understand I'm not making any money, right?
You realize what you signed up for?
Yeah. Well, and God love her, she's a hairstylist. And back then, I had thick hair. So she had something to work with. I had a skinny waist and thick hair. Now I have a thick waist and thin hair.
Right.
But she's still here, even though the bait and switch took place.
It
right?
did.
So I get when you start looking at those dark times and how you can get there. What I don't get is why so many people have so much and they're so bitter.
Right.
I don't understand.
We're pretty
that.
blessed here.
We are.
This county has, where is our average income in the state?
So I was just putting a thing on social media the other day, speaking of angry people, but we're for the 13th year in a row, St. Charles County is the healthiest county in the state of Missouri.
Right, physically the healthiest.
Right. So we're also, median household income that you were speaking of, number one in the state. At nearly $90,000.
That's incredible.
That is really incredible. Our average household income is $112,000, which is, again, incredible. 70% of our citizens have, adult citizens that is, have at least some college. So when you look at that, like, we're a healthy community, we're a wealthy community compared to most, and we're very well educated.
If we're not educated, we're at least a community that pursues education.
Exactly. We may not have finished that degree,
but we want it.
Hey, and I can't say anything because
I'm a college dropout.
I was,
and I know you. This is a remarkable story.
Okay.
I'm just going to go turn left here because I understand your story to some degree, and I want you to fill in the gaps. But you were post 50.
I was 50.
You were 50.
I was 50.
When you got your degree.
Yep. I was on the 32-year degree plan. So if you think your kid is not getting through college the way that they should, just be thankful they're not me. Right?
Well, I was going to say maybe just be a little patient.
Patience is a virtue. And children are trying, right? But what's interesting is I got a corporate communications degree from Lindenwood University, and God bless Lindenwood. I got it the year before. My oldest son got the exact same degree from Lindenwood University, right?
That's awesome.
He finished it in 4 years. I finished it in 32. I would submit to you that I did a better job raising my child than my parents did with me. So at least my kid got
So, Dad, when you listen to this,
that's true. I'm sorry.
So you moved here when you were young, though. What brought you to St. Charles County?
A radio job. So I moved here in July of 1989. So coming up on my anniversary in the St. Louis area. Moved here to sign a radio station on Hot 97 back in the day. Hot 97. Today's hit. And the overnight guy is now my brother-in-law. So I was talking about needed to get my hair cut, need to find a place to do that. He's like, my sister does that. Really? So obviously she gave a great haircut because we got married.
Yeah, the burden was on you to make that decision, wasn't it?
Sometimes you get lucky, right? And you're like, all right, she bought this one. So that was good. But yeah, I moved here to sign the radio station on.
Yeah.
I used to live in Canterbury Gardens Apartments at Del Mar and 170. It's not called Canterbury Gardens now. God knows what it's called. It's been through 20 different names.
That's not Delmar Gardens, no, is it?
No, I didn't live in the retirement home.
But you were young, so you moved here for a job, and then you were married shortly after. You were married young.
Moved here at 23, got married at 24, 3 weeks before my 25th birthday.
Yeah.
So moved here, married a local Pattonville girl. So I'm home, right? There is no moving at this point. We are here.
Are you going to retire here?
Probably, because I'm now a grandfather. So my oldest and his wife live out in Winsville. So we have our first baby boy born in November.
That's awesome.
So I had tried to talk my wife into retiring at some different places, specifically warmer climates.
Right.
The
climate here is wacky.
Panama, to be honest with you.
Sure.
Because from what I understand, Panama is ranked as the #1 place in the world to retire. Just quality of life and expense.
You're talking about the country Panama.
The country Panama.
I've been to Panama.
Panama City.
I've been to Panama many times, and I have friends that live there, and I can attest, it's gorgeous. And
yes,
it's wonderful.
So I threw that out there, which my wife said, "Well, I hope you have fun."
Yeah.
Which I got. That's a hard no.
Yeah.
I had brought up Florida. And she was on board with that until the grandchild.
Right.
Now we're here. I mean, I may do the St. Louis thing.
My wife and I
split the year, but
God
willing, that's not going to be until another 20 years from now.
Well, you've got a life of work ahead of you too. Will you retire?
So my dad was a Southern Baptist minister for 58 years. He retired at 83.
Right.
Probably the route I will go. In some way,
I don't see
form.
you stopping working and just golfing.
So, no, especially not the way I golf. That would be a danger to the community, especially for any house.
Well, they're
that's
putting
on
up
the
tall
fairway.
fences these days.
Yeah, this is true. Top golfing, maybe, and that way I can't.
But I don't
others.
see you as someone to. I don't. You've got a voice, and I mean not your
a literal voice.
But I'm talking about you have opinions, and I think you're someone that has a tremendous ability to discern.
Thank you.
And I mean that because I've studied a little bit of your history with the council, and you've been appointed as the chairman of the council. So
twice now.
People must respect what you're doing. So
or
I'm not here to flip.
Just don't want
Maybe they just don't want the gig
because it sucks.
Right.
So
it's a tough gig.
There is that.
But that being said, you're someone that cares about your community. If you moved to another community, you would care about that, wouldn't you?
I would.
So I don't see you as someone that's going to retire and just check out and grow the beard and be done. You're going to be involved in something, whether it's for income or for.
I did grow a beard, but I had skin cancer surgery.
Did you?
And I couldn't shave because it was on my face. I had 29 stitches here in my jawline. Yeah.
When was that?
That was 4 years ago, right?
Gotcha.
Which speaks to the fact of wear sunscreen.
Yes.
It's a whole lot nicer than 29 stitches in your face. Thank you. We'll be here all week. Tip your waitresses. But I grew a beard. For the first time in my life, I grew a beard because I couldn't shave. I had the stitches there. I thought it looked great. If you go on my county council page, you will see.
Oh, is that your...
That is my picture because the council, the county decided for whatever reason to do new photos.
I pulled it up. How old are you?
56.
I'm 54. We're about the same age.
Yeah.
And this was 4 years ago?
Yes. It's a lot of gray.
That's a lot of gray.
Salt and pepper is, no.
And there's a
lot of salt.
a lot of salt there.
So my wife generally likes guys with facial hair, except her husband.
Except her husband,
yeah. So I grew that, and she's like, no. That's a no.
I've had facial hair for most of my adult life, and I shaved it off several years ago. My daughter cried.
Really?
She wouldn't touch me. So I will forever.
That's very funny.
Yeah.
It's funny because I had the beard and my wife wouldn't touch me. So it's kind of how this worked out.
I'm calling a win on this side of the table.
Yeah, you do win that one.
So let me ask you about your service in the council.
Okay.
What's something you're proud of? that you guys as a team have accomplished?
Oh, geez.
I know there's probably a lot, but tell me your proudest accomplishment.
My proudest accomplishment is getting a port authority established. And
That's a big deal.
It is a big deal, and it's something that so Tom Shaw, who's a realtor here in town, invited me to this morning networking breakfast that was happening in Chesterfield, and this is a number of years ago. So I go to this breakfast, and I meet this guy there whose name is Sicardi Bruce. Never forget Sicardi, a very wealthy St. Louis County guy. Never met him before, didn't know this guy from Adam. So Tom introduces me to him, and he and I are chatting. He goes, "So you're on St. Charles County Council, huh?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Boy, you guys are missing the boat by not having a port authority."
St. Louis has a port authority.
They do. And I went,
St. Louis has ports.
"They do." So I said, "Okay, I'll play. What's the big deal about a port authority?"
Right.
Never heard anything about it. Didn't think anything about it. No one had ever brought it up before. And he kind of explained the benefits of having a port authority. And I went back and started kind of looking at it, and I found out we used to have a port authority.
Really?
Yep.
St. Charles County had a port authority.
Back in the early 70s, there was a guy, Darby Talley was his name, and Darby Talley had a vision in the Upper Peninsula of St. Charles County. There was this little arm that shoots up there, and it's where the Missouri and the Mississippi rivers come together. His vision was to basically cut a Panama Canal in the thinnest part of that arm. So you didn't have to go all the way up around and come down. You could just cut straight through. And in theory, great idea.
Right.
Farmers of the area hated it.
Sure.
Hated it. Not doing it.
They liked being up there tucked away in the weeds and just grow my crops and shoot my guns. And
they didn't want you cutting this big swath through there. So it failed massively, right?
Sure.
Went down in flames. What they had done when they named the Port Authority, you can pick a geographic area. You do not have to name the whole county as a Port Authority.
Really?
You can name just a portion of it, and that's what they did. So they named this upper, basically, floodplain area as the Port Authority, and that was the only geographic area that was in it. Well, once this idea failed, there was no purpose or really anything you could do with the Port Authority at that point.
Was that because there was no useful land? Or was that because there was no community buy-in?
Well, all the land that was up there is floodplain.
Right.
So there's really nothing you can do from an economic development standpoint.
You're not going to put docks and storage facilities.
It's a bunch of farm field that floods on a regular basis, and the people up there don't want you up there. That's why you have duck clubs and things like that are there, because it's perfect. But you're not going to use a port authority to name a conservation area. That just is a dumb idea. Right. So it turns out St. Charles County has the most water frontage of any county in the state of Missouri, 107 miles.
Right. It's literally what? It is surrounded. It goes around the entire
two
northern,
sides,
eastern.
And the largest sides are surrounded by water. So it started making sense. Well, then I started finding out a port authority is actually a great economic development tool, and you can use it for a lot of different purposes. We actually have a county in this state that is completely landlocked with no water around it that has a port authority.
And they have a port authority.
So why? It's because of the economic development tool that you can do with that. So it took me 3 years to convince everybody we should reestablish a port authority, because the one that was there before went away in 1998. Because once it got established, it languished. There was nothing that could be done. In 1992, there was a white paper that was written, and the white paper said that it was just a waste to have this port authority. There was nothing you could possibly do.
Was it costing us money?
No, but it did have its own board.
Okay.
And that board basically was like, look, guys.
It's powerless. There's nothing.
There's no future here.
Right.
So they got rid of it in 1998. So it
dissolved the board, relinquished the
Gave
title.
the Port Authority back. So couldn't get that back, couldn't make that happen. So it took a while to convince people, hey, this idea for a Port Authority was so bad before. Why should we do it again?
Right. It's already been stained. We've gone down this road, but
Right.
you saw something in it.
Well, we were able to name the entire county as the boundary of the Port Authority. When you do that now, you can use economic development tools all throughout the county. It doesn't have to just be on the waterfront.
Right.
But the River Point project that the city of St. Charles is putting together right now, which is a very ambitious project that Mayor Borgmeyer is trying to get going.
And it looks like it's brilliant.
And it could turn out to be a game changer for St. Charles County. It has the potential to really, like the boardwalk that you have down in San Antonio, Texas, and other places like that. It gives St. Charles the opportunity to take advantage of the number one resource it has, and that is the water frontage,
Right.
which right now has really been ignored.
Well, we have a wonderful Main Street district.
We do.
And the shop owners there, they do an amazing job. It's attractive, it's quaint, it's I can't find the word, but it's lovely.
It's unique and
it's
it
a wonderful
makes us special.
experience. Cobblestone streets,
Right.
all the shops, and the waterfront there is tremendous as well.
But it's not being
But it's
utilized
such a
as well as
small
it could.
portion, and it is not being utilized.
Right. So his vision is to basically go from 364 all the way up to 370 and develop the water frontage across that whole way.
Mm-hmm.
So that is really something that could turn out to be amazing, right? Mm-hmm. But here's the thing that when people said, I don't feel great about having another government body that's created with this Port Authority. I said, here's the thing. We're the third largest county in the state of Missouri. We are by far the largest county without a Port Authority. We control 6.2% of Missouri's economy in terms of the money that we generate. Huge. We send all these tax dollars to Jefferson City. If you do not have a Port Authority, you have zero shot of getting any of those dollars
Right.
back. You just donated that money to the state of Missouri.
To others who have port authorities.
So there are 15 port authorities in the state of Missouri. Every year, the legislature puts a pot of money set aside for the development of port authorities. We had zero shot of getting any of that money back. In the latest budget, they put $50 million in for port authorities. So we have started doing things like, because you have a port authority, you can create things like enterprise zones. You can create things like AIM zones. AIMS is a Advanced Industrial Manufacturing Zone. So what they've just done recently is they named this whole area around the GM plant as an Advanced Industrial Manufacturing Zone. And because of that, any new jobs that are created around that area, the county is going to get to recoup 50% of all the income taxes that are paid back into the
As a result
system.
of that, so that money gets back to the county.
So we keep it here.
Not only that, if that 50 million, what did you say, 50 million?
50 million.
Okay, 50 million. Can that money be used for infrastructure? Can it?
There are massive amounts,
Sewers,
amounts of
water service, roads.
I don't know about that
Not
part,
sure. Okay,
about
okay.
doing that kind of infrastructure. But there's, like the River Point project, they could go get grants from this Port Authority budget
Right.
and put it into St. Charles County. So that type of building infrastructure they can do. I mean, there's so many different things, but you've got to have the tool in place.
Right.
And it was one of those things that if Sicardi Bruce hadn't brought it up to me, if Tom Shaw hadn't invited me to that breakfast, right, I never would have heard about it. Or who knows if I ever would have heard about it.
Right.
So it's one of those kind of things where you never know where a good idea is going to come from.
Right.
And then you start fostering that idea and seeing where it can go. And I would tell you, I'm really optimistic about where a port authority is going to go and how it's going to make our lives in St. Charles County even better than what it already is.
Well, that's going to be the key. Is if we have access to funds, the allocation, the ideas, and just having forward thinking people on the council on the county council.
Yeah, the old joke of money's not everything, but without it, you really can't do much of anything.
There's not much there. Yeah,
it's really not.
Exactly. A good friend of mine, Jim Ottemeyer, I'm sure you know him well.
I just saw Jim last night at the O'Fallon City Council.
At the O'Fallon City Council.
He is a great guy.
He's a wonderful dude. And when I became interested, now I was politically active, and I say active, it was more verbal with anger than anything else about 20 years ago.
I was on Twitter. No, I'm just kidding.
This was I think it was before Twitter, but I was very active just in my circles. And I burnt myself out.
Okay.
And I wanted nothing to do with politics.
You were in the majority.
Right.
Yep.
Now I'm getting older. My kids are getting older. And my wife and I have made a decision that we're staying here in St. Charles County.
God love you.
And that has given me pause to consider politics.
Okay.
So I'm approaching it with a new framework, a new mindset.
Gotcha.
I'd like to think it's more mature. That being said, telling people that, hey, I'm interested in politics. And you know what? You and I had lunch last year.
We did.
And
we talked about you doing a podcast. And here we are.
Things
happen.
And we also I expressed my interest in politics. And you gave me some great advice.
Good. It doesn't happen often. So it's good that day I came out on top.
It was a good day.
You never know.
It was one of your good days, Mike.
That's it.
So I started telling people about my desire to to dive into politics. And I asked Jim, because I knew he had joined, he had been elected to the city council.
I talked to Jim before he got in as well.
And I said, so what's that like? Just...
I am dying to hear this answer.
And he says, Mike, I love the work. I care about the city very much. And I'm invested. I own property here. I've been a chiropractor for 30 years. And I've got my people and my tribe. And this is my town.
Yes.
And he says, I love my role. He says, but I was not. I've never in my life have I been hated.
And today,
and he
if
says
you're in
now,
politics, welcome to it.
There are people that hate me, and I don't know how. I've never been. I don't know what that's like.
Oh, today it's especially that climate. So
it really is. And you mentioned that early on when we first started. People will just go. They'll go at you.
What's really interesting right now, especially in our county. So we are the number one Republican voting county in the state of Missouri, right? So
we're a very conservative-minded region.
We are a very conservative-minded county. But a couple of years ago when the pandemic was going on, I was being told I was a far-right lunatic, and I was so blinded by my conservative values that I was ruining the county, right? So that's where we were 2 years ago. I have not changed any of my beliefs. I'm very pro-life.
You're the same guy.
I'm very Second Amendment. All the stuff that was important to me 2 years ago.
Are you carrying a gun right now?
I don't have one with me right now, but I appreciate you asking.
But this is a gun-friendly establishment.
It's a very gun-friendly county, right? But the interesting thing now is I have people show up at county council meetings, and a lady actually brought me a little plastic rhino. And I am now a rhino. I am Republican in name only, and I don't pass the conservative litmus test.
Right.
And I'm
but
thinking,
nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed.
Right? So
when
2
I
years ago, I'm far-right conservative, and now I'm not conservative enough to even be called Republican.
But your views haven't changed.
Nothing's changed about me. And I'm just sitting here thinking...
And I knew you 2 years ago, and I know you now, and you're the same dude. You're the same guy.
But this is the world in which we live. Right?
And when I was doing some recon, some research for this podcast,
and this is where he gets scared, ladies and gentlemen,
because I saw both of those.
Yeah,
online. I saw both of those sentiments.
Yes.
that Mike Elam is a right-wing nut job,
Right.
and Mike Elam is a rhino.
Which would tell me I'm probably doing it right.
You probably are, because you cannot please everyone,
You can't.
and you're listening to the people in your region, in your district.
But at the end of the day, and I hate that phrase, so I don't know why I keep saying it, but you have to do what you feel is in the best interest of everybody, right? And if you just try to chase a crowd of people and please them, you're going to be disappointed, because those people will turn on you in a heartbeat.
Let me ask you this. So how do you see your role as a county councilman? Is it your job to take the sentiment and the desire of your constituents and present that to the council? Or is it your job to take their desires, their ideas, their beliefs, and distill them through your opinions and desires?
I think it's my job to be a good steward of the funds of our taxpayers, right? Because government gets no money unless it takes it from its citizens.
Right.
It doesn't make anything. There is no product, right?
Yeah.
So you tax and fee. Some people would say they're the same thing, but you get your money through taxes.
Right.
So you take your money from your citizens. First and foremost, you need to be a good steward of their money, right? Don't blow it on stupid stuff. Which is that's very argumentative as to what's stupid stuff these days, right?
I really want desperately to ask you about stupid stuff, but
Well,
I'm going to stop. I'm not going to.
Thank you, because we only have an hour. But the other part about that is I'm very active in my community. So Greater St. Charles Chamber, or whatever it's called these days, Regional Chamber, something, St. Charles. And then the Cottleville Weldon Spring Chamber, and then the O'Fallon Chamber. So I'm a member of all three of those.
Right.
Winsville's not part of my district, so I didn't join the Western Chamber. Plus, there are only so many lunches you can go to. So there is that. But I get a really good sense of what the community in general is asking for.
Right.
It's really easy as a political person, at whatever level, whether you're D.C., Jeff City, or St. Charles County, to get a skewed version of what's important to people. Because a lot of times, the minority opinion is the loudest opinion. And they will show up and they will yell and bring signs and try to get TV cameras, and they go, look, this is how everybody feels. The job, I think, of an elected official is really try to get a better sense of what does your community really feel. Right. And the thing that you talked about that I think is the vast majority of people, you got burned out on politics and you're like, I just don't want to be involved.
Right.
25% of the people are Democrat people, 25% of the people are Republican people, 50% of the people are I hate you all, right? Right. Quit being stupid, pay attention to what's going on, and do what's right.
Right.
And that's where the majority of people are. I feel now, and I feel it's always been this way, at least in our country. We are a lean right nation. We're conservative, but we're not far conservative.
Right.
I think there are far conservative groups, and I think there are far left groups, but I think the majority of people lean right. And what they really ask of you is use good judgment, do what's in the best interest of everybody involved. So when you run for office, a lot of times you have a primary that you go through, at least at my level and above, right? If your city, it's nonpartisan, you don't declare Republican or Democrat. When you're county council and above, you have a primary you go through. Your first gate is to get through that primary, which what you see, whether it's left or right, people run to the extremes. Mm-hmm. And as soon as August is over and you go to the general election in November, everybody runs back to the middle. Why? Because that's where the majority of people are. So you run to one side or the other during your primary because those are the people who name you as the Republican candidate or the Democrat candidate.
And if you're not far enough one way or the other,
it's tough, right?
You're
Especially
not going to resonate.
days.
You're not going to satisfy that base.
Right, and that's why we've ended up with where we are right now, especially in D.C. and Jeff City, because the extremes have taken over both parties. So you've got to be far right to get the nomination, or you've got to be far left to get the nomination. Well, if 50% of the people are in the middle, that creates a problem.
There's a lot of confusion there.
There is, and a lot of those people feel that their interests are not being represented. Right? So I often joke with people, I speak to the Vision St. Charles leadership class every year, right? The newest, best class ever, whatever that is. So I do love that. But when I talk to that class, I get the opportunity to kind of talk about where is the county going and what's important to them. So you get the opportunity to kind of look at these young emerging leaders and talk with them about, why did you choose to stay here? Like you said, you and your wife have chosen to stay in St. Charles. Why? Right? So once you start realizing for people, this is really what they want. And a lot of people don't know how to really say that, but they can give you a sense of an overall direction that they want you to be in, right? So when you sit down and you start talking to them and you start finding out, what's important, and then they start asking you questions about what I call the sexy issues of the day, right? Pro-life, Second Amendment, education, all important stuff. None of it is county council.
Right.
None of it, right?
But you have to declare.
You have to declare.
You have to declare.
But those are the issues that everybody wants to talk about when you're running through these primaries.
And that's simply because it's politics, and it has nothing to do with your role as a councilman.
I don't vote on that.
Right.
Right. So I can be as pro-life as the day is long. Have zero vote.
You're voting on use of funds,
planning and zoning, roads and bridges, public safety. Right. So my job is to make sure I don't screw up the expansion of our county, and we grow smart. Growing fast is great. But if you don't
growing
grow
fast
smart,
can be easy too.
Well, growing fast can be a train wreck, right? Because you screw up everything because you're just trying to put people places.
Right.
If you've ever had a bunch of people who are coming to your house and going to spend the night, and you don't have enough bedrooms, it's a train wreck trying to put people everywhere, right?
It is.
Imagine that for your county.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we are.
How many people are in St. Charles County?
Right now, there's about 415,000.
Okay.
And we're going to be at 500,000 over the next 15 years.
So what does that mean for growth year over year of the last 10 years or so?
We've been averaging 6,000 people a year moving out here.
Right. And I asked that because I was thinking back to when you said Amazon would bring potentially 20,000 people.
Right.
If we're doing 6,000 a year
right now,
and there are some legitimate struggles with that.
Yeah.
Housing, community services,
right.
All sorts of things.
Right.
How could we have done 20,000? And I guess that's why you oppose that.
There are some things that.
And this is stuff, Mike, that the average guy that works over at Boeing and comes home, he's not thinking about that stuff.
And I get it, right? Why would he?
Right.
Before I got on the council, I didn't think about that. It's not exciting, right? It's not in the news. It's not the stuff that's being talked about. But
do you find it satisfying to be in that position? Like personally, do you receive joy?
I do.
From your role.
So interesting thing of why do you do what you're doing? Right. So why did you get into doing this?
Right.
One of the reasons that I got into doing this, I'm from Northwest Arkansas. I love Northwest Arkansas.
And listen, if you're going to live in Arkansas,
Northwest Arkansas,
live in Northwest Arkansas.
Exactly.
It's the best.
It is God's country.
It
right?
really is. And part of that because Southwest Missouri is also gorgeous.
It's the Ozarks, and the Ozarks is pretty, right?
It's all Ozarks.
And it's really nice to be down there. And I joke with people that Northwest Arkansas is a great place to be from.
Right.
Right?
So is my hometown.
Well, and that's why we're here, right? So
Something attracted us here.
I wanted to work in radio. I lived in Berryville, Arkansas.
You needed a larger market.
People.
You needed more opportunity.
There's no opportunity, right? So the radio station was owned by the general manager, whose son was the operations manager, and his wife was the traffic director / receptionist, right? There is no path forward for you here.
Right.
So if you want to expand, you need opportunity.
You need to go somewhere.
The opportunity wasn't
So St.
there.
Charles, this region, so it was the St. Louis area that probably attracted you, right?
It did. But the reason why I got into politics is because I have kids now. I don't want my kids to have to move away to find the opportunity like I did.
My kids my oldest is 18. Yours are older than mine. But that was a driver for me to become interested. When I began to realize that, we're going to be here.
Right.
We're adding onto our home. We're expanding we're in.
Your roots are here.
We're anchored.
Right.
And I know that my kids are coming up and they're going to want to spread out a bit.
Right.
I want them to, but I'd love them to be in Wentzville or Troy or even St. Charles. I'd love them to be around us. And that really drew me in because somebody said something to me, something like this, and it's really trite, but it's meaningful, that good people need to get involved, right? I mean, that's such a basic thing.
But it's true.
And especially people that and I want to say this from an honest perspective, that people that are trustworthy.
True.
And not everybody in politics is trustworthy.
Well, this is true. But what we really need is people who have the best interest of the community at heart. If you have that, if you're going to go to Jeff City or DC, that's a whole different level, and there's a lot of different things that I would say you need to consider. Yeah. But in local politics, county, city, school board, you need to have the best interest of the community.
You do.
At heart. And when I was looking at, I had an interest in politics for a very long time. And I was in St. Charles Noonday Rotary Club. Okay. I was lucky enough to have Steve Elam was in my club, who at the time was a circuit judge. Mm-hmm. Dan Pelican was a judge in my club. Sally Faith was a state rep. Tom Dempsey was in the state senate. I had exposure to people who were in the political arena. And you're not
in a public office at this point.
You're
just hanging out with these people.
I was working at Charter, right? I was selling advertising at Charter at the time.
And they did a Jedi mind trick on you, because you become a product of your 5 closest people.
Well, there you go. And there I am.
They snookered you in.
But so when my kids got a little older, and they didn't need me around every day, right? I didn't have the day-to-day kid duty that I had before, right? You have a little more time. Little did I realize what I was really getting into. Right. But I told my wife, I want to get involved in this. So we talked about...
What did she say? What was her opinion of that? What were her words? Really, because I want to...
The first thing she was like, why? Why would you want to do that?
Right. And what did you tell her?
I kind of told her what I'm telling you. I'm like, well, if we don't get involved, what's going to happen to our community? Right. Where are our kids going to go? Look, if my kid wants to go to Kansas City or Dallas or Nashville or something like that, because there's something there that they think is a really good path for them, I fully support them following that journey. That's
live long
great.
And prosper.
But I don't want you to have to leave.
Right. You don't want the community to be the decision maker. Right. You want your personal desire. You don't want a lack of opportunity to be a driver.
Exactly. So where I see my role at a county level is to make sure that our kids have a path forward.
Right.
And you have somewhere to grow to, and you don't have to leave my community to have the opportunity that you need to be a success in whatever you're trying to face. That's an uphill struggle. So real quick, as an example, the St. Louis region is going in the wrong direction. It's spiraling down. And I use the analogy of, I was in the Naval Reserve. So I went to basic training in North Chicago, and we didn't run a lot in Navy basic training
Right.
because a ship is only so big.
Yeah.
And you can run from one end to the other, but then you're out of ship.
And then you
when
gotta
you're out of
you gotta do
ship,
that
you're out
40
of beer.
times.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
a different commercial.
Yeah.
So, but when you get to the end of the ship and you jump off, you have to swim 200 yards away. Why? Because when the ship goes down, it creates a riptide, and it pulls you down
Right.
with the ship. If
You're
not
going to be
far enough
pulled in
away.
that vacuum.
You will get pulled in, and it will suck you down to the bottom
So
of the ocean.
can Saint-
hang on a second.
Okay, go ahead.
St. Louis is doing that.
It is.
The city of St. Louis is at the smallest population it has been at since 1877. It's the number one murder city per capita in America. It's going in the wrong
The
direction.
leadership has been an abomination.
But St. Charles has been swimming against the current. We're only going to be able to do that for so long.
Right.
Eventually, that ship is going to suck it down with us. We've got to get to a more regional strategy. And people ask me on a regular basis, like, why do you care about St. Louis? Let them go down the tubes. And I'm like, no.
That's not wisdom.
You don't understand.
Right.
They're going to take us down with them, right?
Yeah.
We've got to stop it. Do I want to send all my tax dollars there? No, I don't. But I want to do something to work with them to try and stop the sink. I want you to stabilize. I'd love for you to grow. But at this point, I want you to just quit sinking.
Is there some sort of task force or so in business you'll have a cross-functional team, right?
Right.
Across platforms. Is there something like that?
In theory, yes.
Are you guys
But
talking to each other?
all the time?
Okay. Okay.
Which is why in this political environment, and not to get into all election talk and stuff, but that's why I'm a Steve Elam guy, right?
Yeah.
Because Steve Elam is trying to work with people who are not of the same political belief as we are, right?
Well, that's wisdom.
It is. And it's someone who he works with East West Gateway Council of Governments, which is where all our federal funding comes through.
That's what I was thinking. I had heard of that.
Yeah. So if we don't play well with East West Gateway, our federal dollars for roads and bridges not coming out here.
Yeah.
It's very easy
And they're
for
going
them
to
say,
accumulate those roads, those dollars, whether or not we get them.
yeah, and they will put them in St. Louis County, and they will put them in St. Louis City, and they will put them in other counties. They do not have to give them to us.
Right.
If we don't play well with them, and we just call them names and say you're not conservative enough, they'll say, well, of course we're not. We're liberal Democrats.
Exactly.
We don't plan to be
Look at our
conservative
spots.
enough.
That's what we do.
Right. Calling them a rhino, not going to go well. Right. It's not going to get us federal dollars.
Yeah, it's how can we accomplish a goal? Let's develop goals. Let's vision cast and make goals that are
Yes.
good for both of us.
We've got to have some sort of regional approach.
Right.
Because, like I said, if we don't, that sinking ship is going to drag us to the bottom of the ocean with them. And we can't afford to do that. I don't want my kids to lose future opportunities because the region that I was a hand in being a part of,
Right.
I let it sink. I can't do that. I've got to do something that's going to make sure that our region as a whole continues to prosper because I don't want my kids having to move 6 hours away like I did to be able to find opportunity.
I wrote a question down this morning as I was preparing.
Okay. You prepared. That's awesome.
I wrote stuff down.
Not trying to rabbit trail you. I'm just going here. Take the compliment. Let's move.
I appreciate that. Are politics the answer to the problems in the region?
Well, it depends on how you define politics, I guess. I mean, in a broader definition.
I know that's a really broad question. There's a lot to unpack there.
Politics is a huge part of the answer. You've got to get everybody working together.
Right.
Now, how you define that, I guess, to me, I would say it's semantics, but
Yeah.
it really boils down to you've got to get everybody setting out a common sense of goals and working towards those goals. Your vision casting you were talking about, right? If we don't know where we're going, how are we going to know?
How you know if you got there? There's no way to measure if you don't plan.
We've got to figure that part out.
Right.
And I would tell you right now, there is not a consensus of the path forward. Mm-hmm. And anytime you have leadership changes, that's positive and negative, right? The positive can be you get rid of someone who wasn't on board.
Right.
The negative is you start over with the new person.
Right. And there are things you may not know.
And
sometimes an unknown adversary may be better.
You don't necessarily know where they're going and what their goals are.
Right. So we've spent a lot of time on politics.
Moving on.
Well, I don't want to just, talk about the weather, but
which is going to be great this weekend.
It's going to be wonderful. Let's segue.
So married to Jennifer for 30 years.
Well, let me ask you a question.
3 children. Here's
no,
the
you
question.
Finish that. Go ahead.
No, my wife and I got married in 1991.
I know you go to Florida a lot. You like long walks on the beach.
I do like long walks on the beach. I just like the beach.
Do you have a place, or do you just go down and
We've always kind of gone down to Destin, and the Destin area, whether it's
beautiful.
Okaloosa Island is kind of the place that we like. It's in between Fort Walton Beach and Destin, and it's not as crowded as Destin is, and you can buy bigger condos with really nice beaches for a lot less money.
A lot less money.
Rent them, I should say, not buy
Here's
them.
one that I wanted to ask as a segue.
Okay.
Do you have a mentor in your political world?
I have a few.
Okay.
In my political world.
I know you mentioned the folks from the Rotary.
People, yeah. Well, I mean, Steve Elam has been great.
Yeah.
Tom Dempsey, who was president of the Senate, who is a really smart, level-headed guy, who's got a family history here and really good from that standpoint. Chuck Gross, who was also a state senator, another really level-headed, great guy.
And you consider these all mentors?
I do, from a political standpoint. And then,
what about personally? Do you have you ever had a personal mentor? Like, do you feel like there's, you said you're growing up in your folks and whatnot, but do you have a mentor? Personally?
So the person that I credit for kind of getting me where I am in St. Charles County more than anyone else is Ben Blanton of Blanton Construction.
Right.
So Ben has a adopted son who is the same age as my oldest son. And we went to church together. And I didn't know who this guy was, right? I actually thought he was the guy's grandfather. But we would be sitting outside the door waiting for the kids to get out of Awanas or waiting for them to get out of Sunday school class at church at First Baptist Harvester back in the day. And we would just strike up a conversation. And I got to know him. He got to know me. I thought he was a great guy. He said I saw potential in this young guy.
Yeah.
So he was nice enough to take me under his arm and say, I think you ought to consider this. I think you ought to consider that. And
did you ask him or did he tell you?
it really just kind of happened organically of just talking, having coffee. And that's how we did it.
Yeah.
I would love to tell you I sought him out.
But it was much more organic.
It was much more organic, and it was just, he saw the potential in me that I didn't see.
What did he see?
I think he saw me as someone who had some talents to get people's attention, like you were talking about before, good interpersonal communication skills. I love people. I just love talking to people.
Yeah.
I
see that in you. And I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm going to interrupt.
We're already there. So there you go.
My show.
Hey, welcome to the Mike Bauer Show, everybody.
Right. You said something really profound there, though.
What's that?
One of the things that was paramount in the conversion of old angry me,
yes,
or former angry me, I wasn't old at the time,
welcome to it
to
now.
older, much more loving me, is I began to love people.
Right.
I began to truly love them. Now, I won't tell the story now, but there was there was a thing that happened to me over a period of 6 years.
Okay.
That's responsible for that conversion. Maybe I'll tell you off air. But I began to love people. And even in hiring and bringing people into my companies, if you don't love people, you can't be part of it. And I think that's a huge factor in politics. People can smell a rat.
Right.
And I see that in you. I believe that.
Well, I appreciate that. Have you ever done the Gallup survey where they tell you they have 34 personality traits, and you can take the Gallup survey for free, and it will tell you your top 5 personality traits.
Right.
Right.
I haven't done Gallup, but I've done DISC. I've done predictive index.
There's a lot of similar ones, but the one in Gallup for me is my number one personality trait is I am a woo, WOO, and it stands for winning others over.
Yeah.
Right? What it really means is I'm the guy who walks into a room of 50 people, and I want to know everybody's story in the room.
Right. Everybody doesn't everyone have a remarkable story?
And they don't think they do.
Every person does.
It's true. One of my favorite things so I'm in St. Charles Noonday Rotary now because lunch, or I'm in St. Charles Sunrise Rotary now because lunch wasn't working in my schedule anymore. So I moved to a Sunrise Rotary Club. And one of the programs that we had done at Noonday that I loved the most was Meet Your Rotarian. And it's basically just the program that day is a half hour of, hey, it's the Mike Bowie story. And
and tell your story. Yeah.
Tell your story. I'm amazed at how many people just discount their story.
People have so much more strength and resilience than they believe.
Well, and so many people think it's their story, so it's boring. Right?
But it's not.
Well, I grew up here, my dad did this, and my brother or sister did this, and they try to find, I met this famous person at this time or whatever. You don't have to have that story.
You don't have to link you to anybody else.
You don't.
To have a more remarkable story.
What makes you unique is you, right? And people discount that a lot, and I don't know why. And I guess it's more of, I get emotional. I don't know where that came from. But I wish people didn't do that.
Right. People have amazingness in them. Are you a faith person? Are you a person of faith? Okay.
When you grow up the son of a Southern Baptist minister.
And that was one of my first, I was going to ask you about what's it like? Because I grew up Southern Baptist.
Okay. And now you've reformed.
And I had a Lutheran father and a Catholic mother. And I landed at a Southern Baptist church. My friend in third grade invited me to church.
Okay.
Right? And I'm like, okay, you're having this thing. I'm going to go. Of
course.
From that day on.
Go after the kids.
I know.
Yes.
But I went to church and that was my church. And now I'm associated with the Assemblies of God. Which is a cooperative fellowship.
Gotcha.
But growing up Baptist, you and I, we've got a very similar background. But having that faith, and I think that's probably why you got emotional, because you understand what our Creator did in every one of us,
right,
and what He breathed into us.
Right.
And everybody has that same spirit of creation, that same, Jesus breath. And I always say I'm not going to make this a Christian podcast, but I'm unapologetically Christian.
If you're a Christian, it's a Christian podcast.
It's pretty much
it goes. Sorry.
But yeah, and I do agree with you that it's a powerful thing. And that's what drew me. That was part of the factor of the conversion to I want to serve.
Right.
And that spirit of service. And I almost asked you, do you see that across the board? But I'm not going to ask you that because I don't want you to tell on anybody. But
I think that's what you look for in your leader. You want someone who's got a servant heart. And it doesn't matter what it is. My CEO with my company right now, Paul Cronin, he is that guy. That's why I love my job. I work for people who they have a servant leader heart.
Yeah.
And I love working for those people.
So we're going to wrap it up here. I really intended to keep these in an hour, but I can't.
Oh, sorry. I have no idea
how long
we've been
okay.
talking.
But
Lord.
Let me just talk.
Well,
let me just ask you.
Thanks for anybody who stayed this long.
I wonder if they're going to listen, and they're listening. So thank you guys so much. But what do you do for fun? What's Mike Elam do for fun?
Oh, Lord. So we were talking about all the jobs with I3 and then
I know, but
the County Council.
You've gotten good at carving out some time, I know.
But it's really jobs that I do that I love, right? So I got the opportunity over this past year to get back into radio after 27 years of being in radio.
I know you've been invited to guest host for people that are out.
So Steve Moore at 97.1 has said, hey, you want to do this? You've been doing the Reardon Roundtable. I like you being on the radio. People like your voice, blah, blah, blah. So I've gotten to do that, and I love it. It's so much fun because it's not my job full time. Right, so it's fun to go in and
So you're
play.
Considering it a hobby.
It is.
Okay.
I mean, it's not full time. It's something I do when I can, and I love doing it. Right. The other thing is, in a non-COVID year, I would MC 20 events a year.
Right. You do a lot of emceeing.
I love emceeing events.
Yeah.
It's just fun, right? The majority of people run from microphones.
Yeah.
I run to microphones,
you and I,
right? It's
if you give me a microphone, I'm good.
Well, I started in radio at 16,
Right.
right? So at my hometown radio station that we were talking about, and I wanted to be Jack Buck, but somewhere along the line, I became a DJ as opposed to a play-by-play guy,
Right.
and it just kind of ran from there. But I love being the guy at the front of the room to get your attention, and I don't necessarily like being the program.
But
you love introducing the program.
But what I see about you, and I've been to events you've emceed, what I love about the way you handle that is you like to connect people to people.
Right. It gets back to that whole winning others over thing.
Yeah.
So it's funny when Gallup defines that, it says you'll spend 2 minutes with everybody, and once I find your story out, I'll thank you for your time and move to the next one. And when you have a big group of people like that, it's just so much fun.
It is.
To make that connection. You do it through music.
Yeah.
And I'm sure when you're standing there and playing the guitar and connecting with people who are looking at you going, man, I love it when you do this. For me, I love standing on that stage and you make eye contact with people.
It's the same thing,
and you see
Mike.
it land.
It's the same thing because I've been in both roles.
Okay.
It's the same thing. There's a proscenium.
Yes.
And there's a crowd, and there's a responsibility. And I take that responsibility seriously, and you do too. And that's why you're a professional at what you do.
It's just a lot of fun.
Let's end it with this.
Okay.
I want to tell me about your wife.
Oh, so my wife, Jennifer, is Maryland Heights girl from Pattonville, been a hairstylist her entire adult life, graduated from Pattonville, went into cosmetology
So
school.
she cut your hair.
She did.
And then
It was so great. I said, I've got to marry you. You've got to be with me forever. She actually had another boyfriend at the time. So
how'd you win her over?
Talking, spending time.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was unemployed. So I had the time to spend.
You couldn't afford a haircut. You needed someone.
I needed to trade it out. So what can I do?
And you needed a headshot. So
there you go. I got to have.
But what do you guys love doing together?
We like traveling when we can. My wife's idea of a vacation is a beach and sunshine.
Is it?
And just laying around, relaxing. We kind of have this thing where we had this happen at an event down in a resort in Cancun that we were at in Riviera Maya, where she laid out on the lounge all day long and the guy kept bringing her drinks. And I'm good with that for about 15 minutes. And then I'm just bored out of my head.
Right.
So where do I go? I went to the adult watering hole, or the swim up bar, as we call it. And I would just meet people as they came up swim up bar.
Yeah.
And
my wife can lay out in the sun and I can just go.
Yes.
I can just go meet people. My kids hate it because I will talk with anybody.
Oh,
anybody.
Me too.
You can't escape a conversation with me. Tell me what you love about your wife.
Number one, that she loves me. And if you can find someone who loves you, you should probably hold on to that,
back.
right? You should probably lean into that one, right?
What's her superpower?
Geez, I don't know. I mean, that she can put up with me, right?
Yeah.
Mike Elam is a lot.
You are a lot.
I am a lot.
You have a lot of interests, and you have
that's tough, right? So
Do you bounce things off of her?
On a regular basis.
Is she your wisest counsel?
She's someone who grounds me.
Yeah.
And I need that, right?
You're type AAA just like me.
Oh, I definitely am. And you need someone who balances you out, I'm a glasses 3/4 full guy, right? Mm-hmm. And she is really good at going, you may want to think about this.
Yeah.
Right? And it's good to have someone who can put a different thought in your head.
Yeah.
And say, well, before you head down that road charging, you may want to consider this.
Yeah.
So she's really good at grounding me and making sure that I have a better view of things around me.
I think my wife is the same way. I know she is because my interests vary.
Right.
I've gone through probably 6 midlife crises, including
And that's just the last year.
It really is. And she's the one that she understands me and will and I say this with utmost respect and adoration. She will let me do anything that I want to do interest-wise and not question me outside of safety.
Jennifer's not going to go that far, right? She will indulge me on a lot.
But my wife will often have to step in and say, have you spent time with your kids this week?
Well, and that's where emceeing so many events. So that was kind of the interesting thing that Jennifer said to me is the word that you're looking for is no. Because if people kept asking me, would you do this? Would you do this? Would you do this? And I'm a pleaser, right? So I would say, yes, yes, yes. What can I do to help you? Yeah. I love helping you get a problem solved. So yes would be my answer. And I got up one year to where I emceed 28 events in 1 year. And she goes, hey, I'd kind of like to spend some weekends with my husband.
Right.
And not share them with, insert event charity here. I appreciate what you're doing, but do you really have to do that many?
I was talking with Anna Alt about saying no and the ability to say no. And she mentioned that that's one of the things that she had learned later in life and in business, and her husband Dan with their businesses, being able to say no. And having a mentor over the past several years, I've been encouraged greatly, because if something's shiny,
right,
and it's interesting, I'll pursue it.
Well, and the majority of stuff that I MC is a charity, so I
that's the servant's heart.
I want to help you.
You want to
right?
help, yeah.
But there comes a point where you go, okay, is helping you detrimental to my family? And it was becoming a yes.
And maybe your wife was seeing that it was, and maybe you weren't seeing it because you were still wanting to serve.
I wasn't being attentive to her need for my attention. And that was bad, right?
Yeah.
So I've pulled back on a number of events, and I don't do as many. And we're trying to get away more now that the kids, my daughter's 19 and at school most of the year.
Yeah, you got some time. Their needs are far less.
Right. Yeah. And right now I do a lot of traveling for work, and as long as Jennifer can babysit Kason, our grandson, she doesn't really care if I'm there or not.
Right.
So she's like,
you're
hey,
free to go.
When you're gone and I have the grandson, I don't have to share time.
Yeah,
so
that's good.
I'm good with you being gone. But this has been really fun. I've enjoyed the conversation, and
thank you.
It's been interesting to have the back and forth with Mike Bowie. It's like going to lunch.
Yeah, thank you for that.
I think you just recorded our lunch that we had at Cyber.
Pretty much, we did. Let's make this the last question, and I think with each of my guests,
the other one was the last question.
Each of my guests have had like 4 or 5 last questions.
This is the last question.
What's a challenge that you're facing in your professional life now?
Which professional life are we talking about?
Well, let's say with broadband, right? So you've got a competitor here.
I have four competitors just in O'Fallon.
And you're introducing a new thing. But other areas, you probably have maybe no competitors. And
True.
So
I love that.
Do you revel in that challenge, bringing something to market with that kind of competition?
I do. You know what? This job that I have is the best job I've ever had for me.
Yeah.
My job is to go out and talk with cities and community leaders and talk with them about their community, their vision for their community, and how fiber optic broadband and high-speed internet can benefit their community. It's one of those things of, if you have a product that everybody wants, it makes it really easy to sell, right? And right now, I'm in an industry that the federal government just put $65 billion in, which is awesome. And it sucks.
Are you guys going to be going out into some of the more remote areas?
We're not going to do rural.
Okay.
That's not what my company does well. There are companies who do that really well.
Yeah.
And they do it better than we do.
Yeah.
So because of that, that's not really for us. What we're really focused on is to the home. So we want to bring it to your house. And in most places, I mean, I worked for Charter for 11 years. Cable was great.
You know them
to
well,
me.
and that's one of your competitors.
They are now, but I mean, I thought cable was great. The stuff you can do with fiber in terms of speed, it's just mind-boggling. And that's today. Who knows where it's going to go? And that's the other part I love. Looking over the cliff and seeing, where can we go, right? Where is this going to take us from here? And not seeing the end is exciting.
It is. And what you've told me over this last hour and whatever.
2, 3.
Yeah,
welcome,
it seems like
welcome to the Joe Rogan podcast.
Right. Let's just tally it up. Let's tee it up and go. But you've had a lifetime of exploration.
Right.
With career, vocation. You've had a lifetime of not knowing, it sounds like, the 5-year, 10-year plan.
Right.
But you've done very well in adapting to adversity. Is that a fair summation?
You trust that God has a plan for your life.
Right.
And you try to be obedient and just obedient. If I could speak, that would be great. You just follow the opportunities as he lays them out and be open to his plan. And if you do that, you generally end up in some really good places.
Right. We're never promised an easy path.
True.
But we are promised
it is definitely not easy sometimes.
That we have an advocate.
Right.
That funny that meme or that picture, that drawing that says, the footprints one. That time when you only see one.
Exactly.
Said
Why
that
did
God
you leave
is dragging
me?
you.
I didn't leave you.
Well,
I
like
you.
the version that says that time that you saw that one that was all squiggly, that was me kicking and screaming and you dragging me along forward because I didn't want to go.
Exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, Mike Elam, thank you so much. Anything you want to end on?
I have enjoyed being a member of the Mike Bowie podcast, and I look forward to many more of interesting guests that you're going to have on. I just love getting to hear the stories of the people in our community.
I do too.
I'm thrilled, excited, honored that we have these people in our community, and I'm really excited that people are getting to know them.
Well,
because the more you get to know them, the better our community becomes.
We do, and we as a community benefit from the stories. But I want to spend this last few seconds making you uncomfortable.
Oh, God.
Thank you for serving St. Charles County willingly. Thanks. Thank you for being reelected. for wanting to continue to do this. I know that first year you must have been, what the heck did I do?
Oh yes, drinking
and
from a fire hose.
And then deciding to re-up and going through the gauntlet of re-election. Thank you for serving your community. Thank you for being the voice of so many charity events. Thank you for rallying the troops for good, not evil. Thank you for sticking to your values when people attack you and tell you you're not enough, one or the other. You definitely are a man that deserves to be credited for success. So
I appreciate that.
Thank you for your success in our community.
And you're right, that's very uncomfortable. But
you guys should see his face. It's all scrunched up like, where's stop talking? So thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
All right,
I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for the next episode.